Keith Bittner, Richardson, Texas. Obama's a Muslim. When is the media going to wake up and admit it? Perhaps when a shred of evidence is produced, Keith?
How much more proof do we need? If a man robs a convenience store, that means he's a criminal. If a man gives terrorists weapons and money and releases them from prison, sets them free, that means the man's a terrorist. We don't have to be geniuses to figure this out. We know them by their fruits. Either our politicians are bought off, or they have the mental capacity where they should be sitting in a padded room with drool running out of their mouths.
A Fox News alert while you were sleeping, the White House releasing 5 more terror suspects out of Gitmo, despite news that a former prisoner is now recruiting for ISIS inside Afghanistan. And with 30% of former detainees returning back to the battlefield, is this administration putting ideology over national security? Joining us now is someone who worked at Gitmo as an Army medical officer. He is also the author of Saving Grace at Guantanamo Bay, Major Montgomery Granger. Thank you, Major, for your service first and for joining us today. We wake up this morning hearing that 5 more detainees from Yemen are released this morning in the wake of what's happening in Paris, what we're seeing now in terms of cells. How uncomfortable is it for you? You were there to know that these guys right here are now out.
It's very uncomfortable. I think every American needs to ask themselves this question. Do you feel safer with detainees in or out of Gitmo? And if the answer is in, then you need to cry it from the tallest mountaintop. You need to call your representatives and your senators and get them to pass a bill that's in Congress right now to stop the release of detainees. I think we need to remember also that the president declared the war on terror over unilaterally in 2013. And that set a dangerous precedent. If the president feels that the war is over, then the only thing that makes sense vis-a-vis these detainee releases is that he feels that they're victims and deserve their freedom. And nothing could be further from the truth. There's a group out there called Human Rights First, and they claim on their website that nearly 500 convicted terrorists in U.S. federal courts, they've been convicted, but there are only 300 serving time in federal prisons. Where are the other 200?
Where are they?
Could be alive and well living in Paris, Dearborn, Michigan, your neighborhood.
Keith Bittner, Richardson, Texas. Obama's a Muslim. When is the media going to wake up and admit it? Perhaps when a shred of evidence is produced, Keith?
It's a pleasure. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to gather that you were not surprised that in the same day the United States ambassador to the UN said we need to arm the rebels, the Secretary of State said we don't even know who the heck they are and we're just getting to know them.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if they take the UN ambassador home to an asylum each night. She seems a little bit frenetic. But Mrs. Clinton is not telling the truth. What the intelligence community surely told the president, if he bothered to ask before he started his illegal war, was whatever military effectiveness and skill is resident in the Libyan resistance and what Mrs. Clinton called the rebels is in the hands of mujahideen who have fought in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Somalia, in the Balkans, and at home against Gaddafi over the last 20 years. We are in effect, it's as if we were providing air support and air cover for the Taliban. Because those are the people who are effective in the Libyan resistance.
All right, Michael, let me make sure I understand you, and I want everyone who doesn't know you to know that you spent your career in the intelligence services of the United States, a prominent career at that. Are your former colleagues in intelligence, or whatever sources you have, telling you, and you're telling us, that the people that Secretary Rice wants to arm, and the president probably will arm and may be arming already, the people in whose behalf we are killing Libyan soldiers and in whose behalf we are destroying Libyan armaments, may be as bad for human freedom as the people we fought in Afghanistan and fought in Iraq?
What I'm saying, Judge, is within the resistance, with the ones we call the rebels, the best fighters and the most militarily skilled people in that resistance are former mujahideen who have fought against the United States, against Russia, against the UN in Somalia. Those are the people. And as we speak, Their brother veterans from Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, Tunisia, and Egypt will be coming to their assistance. There is no doubt about that.
If the president doesn't know this, tell me if I'm wrong, then he is woefully ignorant of the war he is waging. And if he does know this, he kept material information from us last night. Wouldn't the American public want to know the band of brigands, thugs, and murderers that the American public is assisting in this civil war?
You would think so, sir, but the president can be beaten on this because you simply have to go to Google and look up a Libyan Islamic fighting group and the number of people, of Libyans who are in Al-Qaeda, the number of Libyans who went to fight us in Iraq. This is publicly available information. What Mr. Obama, Ms. Rice, and Mrs. Clinton are practicing is what Bill Clinton practiced, which is lying about facts and finding the media will let them get away with it.
630 plus detainees have been released from Gitmo, and not one has been executed, beheaded, hacked to death, or blown up, or dragged naked and dead through the streets, like our enemies have done to us. Gitmo is absolutely the finest military detention facility on earth, and the Islamist equivalent is a pile of heads.
Well, then why now are we releasing? I mean, we're not even a week in hours off of what just happened in Paris with Al-Qaeda and ISIS both claiming responsibility and ties to Yemen. Why now? Why is the administration so dead set, in your opinion? You were there looking face to face at these detainees. Why are we releasing them now?
I think, again, it's because the president feels there is no war on terror. His behavior screams that. Every single day, every single time one of these detainees is released, he's telling us that they're not dangerous, which is, as we've heard before in the show, insane. Doesn't make sense.
You saw them, eye to eye, face to face.
Right.
Are they victims?
I think at the very least, they're all unlawful combatants and could have been killed on sight on the battlefield. Each one is lucky to be alive. There's not one detainee that I would let loose at this point. There's no way that you can win a war on terror by releasing detainees. It doesn't make any sense.
Keith Bittner, Richardson, Texas. Obama's a Muslim. When is the media going to wake up and admit it? Perhaps when a shred of evidence is produced, Keith?
Assalamu alaikum. Many other Americans have Muslims in their families or have lived in a Muslim majority country. I know because I am one of them. But my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn. I have known Islam on 3 continents before coming to the region where it was first revealed. That experience guides my conviction.
You are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith.
As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches that, the Holy Quran tells us, and the Holy Quran also says, we will convey our deep appreciation for the Islamic faith, which has done so much over the centuries to shape the world.
I would like to speak directly to the people and leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Your great and celebrated culture. Over many centuries, your art, your music, literature, and innovation have made the world a better and more beautiful place. We know that you are a great civilization, and your accomplishments have earned the respect of the United States and the world.
I also know civilization's debt to Islam. The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. But to be credible, those who condemn that slander must also condemn the hate we see in the images of Jesus Christ that are desecrated. Those who condemn that slander must also condemn the hate we see in the images of Jesus Christ that are desecrated.
And even if we did have only Christians in our midst. If we expelled every non-Christian from the United States of America, whose Christianity would we teach in the schools? Would it be James Dobson's or Al Sharps's? Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy? Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay, and that eating shellfish is an abomination? Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith? Or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount, a passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application?
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. So let me say this as clearly as I can. The United States is not and will never be at war with Islam.
A woman was actually beheaded. Police say the 30-year-old suspect had been fired from a food processing plant, and workers said he had recently tried to convert them to Islam.
A threat against the creators of South Park, a warning by a radical Islamic group right here in America, right here in New York, that they will end up dead because of a cartoon.
What's going on? Who are these people? What are they saying? What does it mean? And why is CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, sponsoring a Hamas jihad rally in downtown Miami, right across from the Israeli consulate? What is that all about? Well, very simple. CARE is Hamas.
Obama's a Muslim. When is the media going to wake up and admit it? Perhaps when a shred of evidence is produced, Keith?
You know, it's interesting that people are watching the total destruction of the global economy.
So they'll pass this rule. It's, believe it or not, called martial law.
Pretty impressive, a display of international military might. Thousands of men and women from several different countries all landed on Camp Pendleton.
The FEMA camp bill allows the government to run at least 6 military installations when a national emergency is declared. These emergency centers would be run by FEMA under the command of the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Where they should be sitting in a padded room with drool running out of their mouths.
A Fox News alert while you were sleeping, the White House releasing 5 more terror suspects out of Gitmo, despite news that a former prisoner is now recruiting for ISIS inside Afghanistan.
Richardson, Texas. Obama's a Muslim. When is the media going to wake up and admit it? Perhaps when a shred of evidence is produced, Keith?
How much more proof do we need? If a man robs a convenience store, that means he's a criminal. If a man gives terrorists weapons and money and releases them from prison, sets them free, that means the man's a terrorist. We don't have to be geniuses to figure this out. We know them by their fruits. Either our politicians are bought off or they have the mental capacity.
With 30% of former detainees returning back to the battlefield, is this administration putting ideology over national security? Joining us now is someone who worked at Gitmo as an Army medical officer. He is also the author of Saving Grace at Guantanamo Bay. Major Montgomery Granger. Thank you, Major, for your service first and for joining us.